It's the weekly show here on the Blue Room. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm sure everybody is doing very well after Everton won 4-1 against West Ham United last night in the Carabao Cup. Last 16, they are into the quarterfinals. The draw for that is tonight. And Everton women won in their semi-final against Birmingham City. Absolutely demolished them. 3-0 in the end. It could have been a whole lot more from what I saw from that particular game. So great for them as well. We'll have a chat about both of those games over the course of the show. We were meant to have Daniel Storey on to speak about his book today, but unfortunately schedule issues and some broadband problems have got the better of us. But we are going to have that interview out over the course of the next few days, so don't fret on that. But Dave Downey joins me and Paul Guest. I'm sure everyone will agree. Very happy Dave Downey after all things going on at the moment. That's, woke up today, Dave, to do Blue Room breakfast early doors after not much sleep last night. Feeling great. Just every show at the moment I'm just looking forward to and talking about the Blues and how well they're doing. It's nice to walk around though, and you can look forward to speaking about these lads and these girls.
Yeah, just in reference to what you were getting Daniel's story on to talk about, and Big Nev obviously is a massive mental health advocate and everything he does on social media. We see it on a daily basis, sort of his Twitter handovers to different organisations and people who devote their lives to helping others. It's really inspirational. But just in relation to that, I think what we've seen from Everton in the last, 4 weeks, I think since the season started, does, I think, magnify how much football matters to us all, and how much the sort of the trajectory Everton are on dictates a lot of people's moods. And I used to have like some quite deep thoughts about this, to be honest with you, because ultimately we care too much, don't we, as Evertonians? We care far, far too much about a gang of millionaires who stroll around the football pitch and couldn't give a toss about us in general. And I know I'm just sort of covering a blank. I'm sure some of them do. I'm sure most of them do. But what I'm trying to get at is I find personally my mood is heavily influenced by how Everton are doing. And not to label it as something as I can point a finger of blame in that direction when things aren't going good, and it coincides with me not feeling so good in a mental health capacity. It does, like you said there, you do walk around with a bit of a strut, an extra spring in your step. You wake up, your coffee tastes that little bit sweeter. Everything you do has a little bit more colour in your life and things like that. And it is just a crest of a wave right now. If you look everywhere, social media is a relatively calm place and everybody's getting along, talking about how good various players are and comparing them to players gone by. It's what we want it to be and what it should be, I think, in many of our minds. And I think that you've sort of exemplified that point, Matt, by saying you sort of wake up, even though you haven't had much sleep, you still sort of you still have that sly grin on your face that, you know what, the Toffees are doing well, and no matter what else is going on in your life, there's that's a real positive impact right now, and hopefully it continues as long as possible. But we couldn't at the start of the season have envisaged how good we would have been so far, and how the transformation has just been. It's immeasurable, isn't it? It's not possible to actually put your finger on how far this team's come in such a short space of time. It's gone from, I think, Matt, being something that you think, well, is it a little bit of a storm in a teacup to begin with? Is it just that new season bounce and a couple of new players? But I can't ever remember it lasting this long. So hopefully it's sustainable. Let's face it, we're not going to win every single game this season. That'd be ludicrous. But
don't be so negative, Dave.
I think I think if we keep things together, there's not a lot that looks like it can go wrong with this football club. And I know we've said those things in the past, but it feels like we've got a solid foundation to really kick on and have a really special season.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to start a season well, and that is a cliche that always gets trotted out. But I think it was extra important this season day that Everton started well, not just because of how they finished last season in regards to the lockdown, but just the relentless nature of the matches. It's been weekend, midweek, weekend, midweek, weekend, midweek, and weekend again coming up now. And if Everton lose that game against Tottenham and then say battle to a win against Salford, and then they, maybe draw against West Brom and draw against Palace, I think the relentless nature of the games, certainly as fans, it would probably be, it's this again, and I'm sick of this. I quite like having the lockdown when there's no footy. All those sorts of thoughts start to creep back into your head, don't they? It's probably the same for the players as well, who'd rock up and think, we've got new players in, we've got a great manager, but nothing's really changed there, and we've got another game in a couple of days. We haven't really got much time to sort out all these problems. And I think the relentless nature of this start of the season, obviously it's going to continue in the main, but it'll calm down after the international break a little bit, won't it, in regards to when the matches are being played. But if Everton had stumbled and slipped up a few times in these opening weeks, I think those negative thoughts would have been creeping back into the head of everyone. But because it's just been win, it's like, right, when's the next game? Let's have it. We're going to beat who's having a point in front of us at the moment.
Well, football is completely different to any other walk of life, isn't it? But in one particular way, it's the same, and it's the enjoyment you get out of doing your job. And for the players, I think that rings true at the moment, because we all know in our everyday lives, we're lucky enough to do this for a living, partially, Matt. And our daily jobs, we've chosen careers that we're supposed to enjoy. I know that's not always the case, certainly when you're a freelance journalist like me and you both are at this moment in time. But we've chosen career paths that are there essentially because we enjoy what we do. We love making content. We love people listening and getting involved and discussing it. But there are times, particularly when Everton are poor, that it's difficult. It feels like a little bit of a chore at times. And look, I'm not going to go down that track of ever taking it for granted, but everybody has bad days at work, and I guess that's no different if you're a footballer. And you're absolutely right. I think you might well look at a set of fixtures or a difficult week coming up when you're not in a decent run of form, thinking, this feels like a real chore. I can't be bothered with this. And I think it's difficult to equate what, me or you having a bad day at the office and then trudging home and saying, oh, I'm glad that's over, and maybe have a beer of a night to sort of try and forget your problems and your woes. Footballers can't do that. They have to be on it all the time. And as a source of entertainment in these particular times, Matt, with lockdowns and all that sort of thing, they are a genuine source of entertainment. You know what I mean? They exist to keep people going, i.e. everybody's like, well, I can't wait for the next game. I can't wait to watch Everton play. Because it's got an entertainment factor for all of us. It's got a vested interest. Of course, there's an emotional side to it. But I don't think people would appreciate that for footballers it is a job. When football's a job, you think, well, I can't help but feel as if I was in that position, I could never have a bad day. I could never worry about anything. I'd be financially secure for the rest of my life. How could this possibly ever be miserable for anybody? But we've seen in the past, haven't we, with the way things go and the run of games teams have, and when you're stuck in a rut, which we have for 5 years, maybe 6 years in general, it must become really, really difficult to be motivated to perform. And can you imagine if you're sitting there, I don't know, runs of form in the past where maybe you haven't won in 5 or 6 games and you've got a trip to Anfield coming up, or a trip to Man City, or a trip to Old Trafford coming up? How can you possibly think, oh, I'm really relishing that? And I know professionalism does have its part to play, but you can't sit there if you've been on a really poor run. You'd be sitting there dreading it. You'd be thinking, I can't wait for this to be over. If we can limit it to a certain scoreline, I'd be quite happy if I come away from that, and then I can sort of recharge the batteries and look at a more sort of easier games coming up to win. But footballers, I imagine, because they are human, have the same thought process as we do when it comes to work. It's just theirs is showcased in the public eye. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. But right now, you talk about how we've had such a quick run of games in terms of weekend, midweek, which will obviously dissipate a little bit after the international break as the League Cup takes a backseat until December, I think it is. Yeah. So we should go back to sort of weekly games. Don't forget, we've got a month to catch up effectively from when the season should have started. But when you're winning games, I imagine it's a little bit easier to recover. It's a little bit easier to get over the knock that you got the previous night and just sort of dust it off and get ready to go again. And winning's a routine, I think, in football. And Everton are smack in the middle of this now, and hopefully they're all enjoying it and thirsty for more as well. Because like I say, if they approach it that way, I don't think there's much that can go wrong. Yes, we'll lose the better sides. We'll drop points unexpectedly. That's the nature of every single season. Liverpool have won it at a canter last season. They have difficult moments, but ours look like they can be reduced. They can be sort of minorised a little bit. Because we seem to have a real foundation where not much can actually go wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, and it's one of them, isn't it? Where you mentioned about the recovery there as well, and how it's easier to get back in, and Just something that came into my head then when you're saying about, you talk about games against City and Liverpool away, you sort of write them off. It's watching that Spurs documentaries made me realise that the players do that, and they talk about football with their mates like we talk about football with our mates, and we'll sort of go, well, we're going there, we're going to Man City away, and they've won however many games in a row, or Liverpool, and they've won however many games in a row. It's going to be tough for us. This, a point would be great, and you'd almost write it off. And like you said, the human beings, and most of them are young men and young women who watch football and have an interest in football as a fan outside of it, albeit it is their job. And those thought processes still creep into their head, and you saw that with that Spurs documentary. But on the recovery, Dave, and the next game, and just keep on going. I think it's probably fitting we should talk about the girls and their win last night first and foremost, because they had a grueling game, obviously, on Sunday against Chelsea, the defending FA Cup holders. They come back and won that one. Obviously, Birmingham had a game against Brighton as well, which went to penalties, so they were heavy legged. But watching, I had it on for the first half last night, and then I had it on the background and sort of watching both games while we were on as well, with the Carabao Cup stream. And it was just, it seemed like every time I was watching it, or every time I looked up, that Everton were applying the pressure. They could have easily lost the patience early on because the goal didn't come. They hit the post. At times it didn't quite work in the final third, but Izzy Christensen plays a great ball into Simone McGill for the first goal, and from that point they didn't look back really. And it's massive credit, I think, to Willie Kirk and his coaching staff and the girls and the new signings that having lost effectively their star player in the summer in Chloe Kelly. And we were sat on shows here going, it's going to be really hard for them to replace her for her goals and her influence in the team. That they've gone out, made some savvy acquisitions, and they look even better for it now.
Yeah, I mean, Everton have got a history of doing that, haven't they? Older listeners, older watchers of what we're doing right now, Matt will remember Gary Lineker in '86. He was absolutely fantastic. Everton ended up winning nothing. We sold him, and then we ended up winning the league again. It's funny the way things work out that way, that if you sell a star player, generally I think a lot of people, the knee-jerk reaction is the world's caving in. And everyone remembers when we sold Wayne Rooney. The year after that, we went and finished fourth. It just works out that way sometimes. The sum of the team's parts is much better than the individual often, and I think we're seeing that now with Everton women. You look at everybody else chipping in with goals. You had Lucy Graham, of course, Christensen, like you said, Chloe Kelly, who's obviously the main focal point of the attack last season. But you look at everybody else, I think if they're the right kind of profile and personality, which is probably typified by Lucy Graham recently because she's been outstanding, then you tend to rise to the challenge, I think. And that Spurs documentary might well be an example. When they lost a player like Christian Eriksen, I think a lot of players internally would then feel, well, okay, now it's on me to prove that I can be the influence that he was when he left. And I think that at the top end of the game, it probably separates the wheat from the chaff, the really good ones, doesn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
In many ways, because if you're somebody who's been on the periphery, or maybe somebody not looked at in the light of a Chloe Kelly in that side, if you've got that attitude of, well, I want to be the next one of them, I want to be the person who recreates all those goals, I want to be that missing piece that we've got since losing a star player like that, then that attitude, I think, serves everybody quite well. And this Everton ladies side seems to have a number of those characters in there who are able to do that. Simone McGill's a striker, isn't she, as well? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure she'll have seen it as an opportunity when Chloe Kelly left to really pick up that mantle and be the main focal point of the Everton attack. And she took a goal really well. I watched the highlights earlier on. It was live on BBC 4 as well, wasn't it? And obviously there'll be huge amounts of coverage for the final in exactly a month today. I think it is 1st of November when they're at Wembley. Who knows, might be able to get a few people in there. The way the government might want to introduce spectators and things like that. That'd be absolutely brilliant. It does make you feel already a little bit regretful that it's happened when people aren't allowed in. I'm sure that's probably going to be the case with the men's team as well. We'll make a final for the first time in 11 years and then nobody will be able to go. I've seen a lot of people talking about that.
I'll take that, to be fair.
Absolutely. We'll find our own ways to celebrate, socially distanced and in line with coronavirus protocols. Make no mistake about that. But and talking about that side of things in terms of a quick influx of games, Matt, you're right. They put everything into that Chelsea game at the weekend. Birmingham, yes, they were favourites against Birmingham to win last night. But by no means is that an easy challenge when you've just overcome probably the best side in England, in Chelsea. And I think they've certainly got the best manager as well. For them to come through that is testament to how Willie Kirk has got this team organised. He's got the girls set up in a way that's really difficult to beat. And then when they do get the chances, they invariably take them. And it's become a really, I think, much more of a team effort than it has been in previous years. But also, as well, I think we need to give credit to the club, because in Chloe Kelly leaving, they quite quickly realised, I think, that they needed to cater for that loss in terms of bringing in players who are good enough to push Everton on in the WSL, and they've done that. They've done it aplenty. There's several players they brought in who we haven't even seen the full potential from, because the season's still in the early throes and things like that. So it's a wonderful time for Everton women riding on the crest of the wave, and I'm almost certain, Matt, that it's not isolated. I think there's a confidence and a buzz that's emanating throughout the whole football club right now. The fans, both teams, everything that's going on seems to be a really positive thing, and it seems to just they feed off each other. Yeah, Calvert-Lewin, which I thought was lovely at the end of his interview that we put out on our social.
Fantastic, yeah.
It's seeing that. Imagine if you never ladies play there and you see that, the lad who's top of the Premier League goal scoring charts, probably the hottest property in terms of English football right now, given the current landscape, is saying congratulations and well done to you. I think we're past the point where something like that would be a little bit of lip service. I think we're at something that's really genuine, and it's a sign of what's going on at the football club. And again, if they were to go and win that next month, they will be underdogs whoever they face. Let's make no mistake about that. Arsenal and Man City are probably they're the other two of the big three, I suppose. But Everton are quite clearly right up there in the battle for who's best of the rest type of thing. And the recruitment they've done, everything else going on there, looks like they can really try and breach that.
Yeah, and I think even like Valerie Gavan, who was on the bench last night, she's French international footballer, and we haven't seen much from her yet. And you wonder when you put her in that setup as well, and they could go to another level. And just finally on this
as well, Matt, the Australian.
Yeah.
There's loads more to come.
And I think it's really, we spoke to Willie Kirk, probably earlier in the year, and he mentioned, I think it's the case in the interview that they did, the FA Cup is something he was prioritising. He stuck it up on a board and said, this is the date of obviously it's been moved since, but the final's this date, and we've got it in us to be there. And he was really confident. And I think a lot of managers were sort of shy away from that. They sort of say, there's no pressure, the league counts more, we don't want to put too much expectation on them, etc., etc. But I think it's great that he sort of got a read on their personalities so well, and obviously knows them so well, that if you sort of lay down the gauntlet to these players, then they're going to respond well to it. And I think doing that and getting the best out of him by doing that is a testament to his ability to read his players and the way in which he's got to know his players. Because let's not forget, in the grand scheme of things, he's not been at the club for that long, has he? Either, he's still relatively fresh. But fantastic job done by him. And as you mentioned, Dave, Lucy Graham, great leader in that side as well. There's a lot of good things going on there at the moment.
I think that they'll have to bat clubs away, Matt. I think in the future with Lucy Graham, she's an exceptional talent as a footballer. But like you say, those leadership skills, a great rarity, I think, in the ladies' game. Somebody who's constantly bellowing at the fellow teammates, who is sort of demanding a high standard of everybody. That is immeasurable. Again, it's something that you can't put a price on. I don't think so. She'll definitely have a lot of suitors. I think he'll try and pry it away from Everton in the future. But yeah, for now, mate, they look like they're flying. And you talk about other sides. We had a conversation, didn't we? I won't forget it ever. I think you were actually off on that day on Team Talk over the summer. Tim Stillman from Arsenal, who's a journalist with their ladies team, and he was actually telling us about how relatively cheap it is to sustain a top level women's side. And it actually isn't that much in terms of a cash outlay. But Everton seem to have really put a focus into this. I mean, you talk about Willie Kerr coming in. Remember Jamie Spence, who we know who spent quite a bit of time on the Blue Room in the past. It obviously didn't work out for him as the manager, but they didn't have the finances that Everton decided to push into the ladies' game. Which I guess, I mean, how could you not? You'd be sitting there right now feeling pretty sort of rueful about that, thinking that, maybe the way Roberto Martinez felt when Farhad Bashiri come in. You sit there and think, do you know what, if they'd been able to hang on for another year or so, perhaps this could have been me. But back then, you think, what, 2.5, 3 seasons ago, this was a club that was languishing down there in the top division before the reformation of the WSL. And now they're a top-class side, they're better than mid-table. And I'm really excited to see where they could go next.
Yep, 100%. We'll be doing a lot of build-up to that game in the FA Cup final. And keeping in touch, obviously, with how they're getting on the WSL over the next few weeks in the build to that as well. So big congratulations to them. Just a few other stories, Dave, today. Obviously, the main one when it comes to the lads is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. A few hours ago, as we record this now, called up to the England senior squad for the first time. No surprise, really, given what he's done over the last few weeks of the season. But, you know, I put a tweet out on the Blue Room account before, sort of saying he's got a new long-term contract this year. He's scored 8 goals in his first 5 games. He's top scorer in all of European football's top 5 leagues, and now he's got his first senior call-up. It's been a hell of a year, hasn't it, for him?
He amazes me, Calvert-Lewin, because I've been one of his doubters in the past, and it's been great to see this morning. I think you've seen a lot of Evertonians eating some really large slices of humble pie, admitting that they were wrong about him, and I think it's almost become quite popular to admit that you've been wrong about him, which is obviously not the way with many fans on social media. But I mean, you look at the journey he's been on, the journey he's had. He will not have enjoyed a lot of it. He will not have enjoyed flogging himself countless times, even when he made it through to the first team and become a bit of a regular in Ronald Koeman's side. You won't have enjoyed the ins and outs of Sam Allardyce, and I think it was Marco Silva really who gave him that impetus, giving him the number 9 shirt. Do you have to throw a little bit of credit his way? I think you probably do. He allowed him to play that forward role, and still there were doubts, Matt. I think if you to look at the chronology of his way to where he is now, it's been far from a smooth ride. He's had so many bumps along the way, at points where I think many of us, even you who's stuck with him all the way through, to your credit, you'll have still had internally, I don't know if you'd admit it now or not, but internally you'd have those doubts over whether, maybe not so much his ability or his talent, but whether he'd actually be given the chance. And I think that was a big one. And who'd have thought it? Romelu Lukaku leaving is probably the best thing that's ever happened to him, really, because he wasn't even second fiddle, let's face it. He was somebody who was brought in to run the channels and essentially do the legwork that he lacked in the initial. And then you look at the last couple of seasons, goal scoring still hasn't been there, but the work rate has. You referenced something really important last night, and it was a real mark in the sand for me when he put in that performance away at Manchester City at the start of Koeman's.
Oh, that was Mark Mose.
Was it Mose? Yeah.
As much as I'd love to take the credit for it, yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a fantastic point, and one that really needs, I think, stamping on his career trajectory, really, Matt, because that night, I think, typified to us that he was definitely a Premier League player. We still didn't know about his goal-scoring ability, but he was essentially played as a front man up front on his own, yet didn't look like he was ever going to score a goal. And yet he'd come out of that game. I remember it was on the post-match that night outside the Etihad, saying how good he was in that game. He ran them ragged. I mean, you think of City back then, right in their peak, Vincent Kompany, smack in the middle of his the best years of his career. And all of the City stars they've got, he was immense, holding the ball up and keeping possession. And that's slowly but surely translated into him getting the opportunity he deserves. And it just shows you, if you persevere with people, if you keep patience with them, even in the cutthroat world of the Premier League, and you need everything here and now, and you can't wait for things, it does come. And maybe it's a way for many of us to learn, many clubs to learn as well, that when players don't hit the ground running, when it's an old adage, isn't it? Years ago, you get a chance. I think mid-90s Premier League, genuinely, like, strikers that get a year, maybe 2, to prove themselves before they become a regular at what they need to do and be able to become top-level performers. That's completely gone from the game these days. So he's a little bit of a throwback like that, which I like. That he would not have been given this chance in many ways at many clubs as well. I think he'd have been thrown around a little bit, possibly a load of low moves. But perseverance and I guess essentially a little bit of luck on Everton's part that they haven't been able to find that striker since Lukaku has meant that a lot of influence has gone his way, a lot of impetus and pressures on his shoulders, and he's delivering, and we're all enjoying it right now. And I couldn't care less about England, as you know, Matt, but I was absolutely delighted to see that call up today.
I think that you're right. The club have shown patience and perseverance with him to a degree, but
he's shown it with them as well. I think, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's ever been completely blind perseverance or patience from the club.
No.
I think there's even people who've been critical of him down the years, which is absolutely fair enough, have always recognised and indicated that there is something there. People always used to say there is something there with him. His physical attributes are good. He provides a quite unique threat in his ability to win headers, to run to the channels. He's very quick as well. And I think people would recognise it, would always say there's something there, but I'm not sure he can entirely put it together. But I think what that shows, David, that the fact that the people stuck with him, and Everton have had a lot of different managers down the years who've played a lot of different styles of football. But every single one has always gone back to Calvert-Lewin in the end, haven't they? There's the dogs again. No, we're talking about Dom, so you've got to get a word in. Dogs.
It's because there's a nice cream van outside, so they've gone nuts.
Yeah, but but I think he's a player I think that his teammates really appreciate, or certainly I've appreciated even before he was scoring goals, and managers appreciate as well, because he's always done a fine job for the team, whether it be playing on the right hand side or playing at the top end of the pitch. And I think if you go back to that spell in Marco Silva's first season, where we won those 3 games in a row at home against top 6 sides, and we drew against Liverpool, and it was all really encouraging and exciting. Even in those games when he wasn't scoring, I remember speaking about it on the show and saying, well, he's playing a really important role in a team that's beaten other really good sides. So why wouldn't he be in the team? And obviously his role has changed a lot since then. He's very much a penalty box player now, but I just think it's dead encouraging that we've got that player now who can score goals and be in the right place at the right time. And it's not just luck, that of course, it's anticipation and his movements and all those sorts of things is really sharpened up. But I think that the really exciting thing for me, Dave, is that he can be that, but he can also still be that fella who, if you're playing away from home, at a place where you're not going to have much of the ball, he can win your fouls, he can hold it up, he can run into the channels and do all those things as well. So he is very much a multifaceted striker. He can be the penalty box poacher like he has been the last few weeks against teams we should be beating. And I think he's shown countless times that against the better sides, where you may need to knock the ball into the channels and hold it up a little bit and bring others into the game, that he can do that as well. Albeit with the calibre of play we've got around him now, he might not have to do that as much.
Well, you think of the context of why that's the case, Matt. Do you know what? I think I'm going to have to get a soundproof house. Never mind the room. Just wait for that ice cream van to go off. Is that not the loudest ice cream van you ever heard in your life, by the way?
It sounds like it's in your front room.
Yeah, there's the dogs howling at it now. It's not a good place to broadcast. Get me back in the studio, will you, Matt? Ring the council and tell them to start putting together the coronavirus-proof studio for us. But to give him context of why people, I think, maybe weren't willing to give him the patience, was he was thrust right back into the action after Lukaku left, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Which everybody was devastated about, that we didn't replace him. We all had the fun with Steve Walsh and the comments he come out with after Lukaku left to go to Man United, and that probably rubbed off unfairly. Looking back on it on Calvert-Lewin, that probably put a lot of, well, look, this guy isn't good enough. Simply put, we need to go out and spend a lot of money on a top level striker if we can get one. And it did put an unnecessary pressure, because he wasn't allowed to grow or thrive. He was just thrust straight into it. And as many of those players, there's a little bit of a generation of them, isn't there, knocking about the club. John Joe Kenny's another one, and Davis is the other. I think he was sort of probably infamously remembered for David Unsworth when he decided to drop every signing we had and go with much of the under-23 team away at Leicester that time. And obviously that did them no good whatsoever. But if you're able to learn from those lessons like he has, look how... I can't imagine there's anything in this game that can be thrown at him. You look at the way young players have handled themselves in regards to Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood recently, basically banished from the England squad for who knows how long, certainly this one. And I imagine those challenges in life, that everything that it throws at him, he's able to shrug his shoulders at that, given the, I'm pretty sure, awful time he had for the say for the last 18 months. His Everton career has probably been quite difficult for him to firstly excel and secondly mature as a normal, 20-odd-year-old kid who's learning the walks of life in a bizarre environment of a Premier League, which is a hotbed for sensationalism and anger and hate and frustration. And I'm just talking about me. So that's why, on a personal level, I admire what he's done. Probably a little bit more than what he's done and achieved so far as a footballer, Matt. And obviously they're going hand in hand right now. But if you come to a point where, and the end of last season might be a decent example actually, where he went through a spell where he didn't score. He found it really difficult to find the back of the net. Didn't for 1 minute look to me like he was getting frustrated or upset, or he didn't look like he was panicking. The only thing I saw a little bit more from him was shooting on sight. He tended to get the ball maybe a little bit deeper and have a pot at goal. Absolutely nothing wrong with that as far as I'm concerned. Yet others, players who are older than him, might take that run of form much more worse than he did. And I think he can put all of that down to his experiences as a human being, more so than a footballer in his formative years since he come to us. So I love him. I love the bones of him. And again, referring it to what happens in the future, young English striker that's banging him in for fun. I think there'll be a lot of clubs having a look at that in the future, and at the very least, they're having to put a huge premium on his head.
Yeah, well, thankfully he signed a new contract not too long ago in that regard. So
you're panicking already. I can see the anxiety in your
face.
I
won't sell him for all the money in the world, mate. You know that. That'd be a world record fee, I think, offered for. I'd let him go.
Did you just not see him, Matt, that he's so sound as well? Like, he just seems like
he is, yeah.
A really nice guy. And you mentioned the sort of physicality a little bit earlier. Someone put some photos up of when he made his debut.
It was Mike Greenall.
He's like double the thickness. I'd love to see the stats in terms of his muscle weight and muscle percentage in his body and stuff, because he's a unit. I mean, you look at him, as if someone put a picture up of his legs the other day. Oh, mate, you can crack nuts on them. I mean, he's like double the thickness of what he was, yet seems a hell of a lot faster as well. He's a proper athlete.
I think sometimes when players put that bulk on, they struggle to maintain that natural speed, don't they? And he's managed to. He's still absolutely wrapped in that sense. It sounds like it's all kicking off in your house, mate. Oh my God!
So I told Haley to put the dogs out, but in turn, putting the dogs out means that they've got the whole world to bark at the ice cream van that's just left. So the remainder of this show should be a little bit more quiet if Bob shuts up.
There we go. You're going to go off and get a cornetto?
I was going to get a 99er, but obviously we've gone too long.
Just very quickly before we wrap up, just a couple more points. More speculations about Moise Kean today, mate. Leaving the football club, obviously left out of the squad last night for the game against West Ham. Angelotti said he's not injured, but Kean said he didn't feel right. Starting to feel as though I wouldn't be too surprised if he left by the end of this window, which would be disappointing. But I don't know. I just feel like maybe we're not getting the whole story with Kean here. Something maybe isn't quite right, and it would be disappointing if he was to go back to Juventus. Maybe Everton would be happy if they could get the money back. But I think the thing I'd say is, as much as we want him to come good, and there's clearly a player there, there'd be a reason why Everton are selling this fella if they do decide to sell him, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it has a touch of the Ademola Lookmans about it, this, for me. Who ironically has just got a move at Fulham, hasn't he? He's back in the Premier League now. It'll be interesting to see how he kicks on.
We should also congratulate Ross Barkley on his huge move to Aston Villa.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? It's funny. We've had all our fun with this, and it's blatantly obvious that we're all really bitter at Ross because of, one, we thought he was one of us, and two, he completely screwed the club out of some hefty financial income coming in, didn't he? So, it's a fall from grace, I think. Funny thing is, Matt, I think he might well do. He'll do okay there because he's going back to a football club that is. Look, we weren't ever like that, but a newly promoted side where he will get a game. I feel as if he could do some damage there. That's a sort of disclaimer I'm throwing out right now when he goes and bangs in 20-odd goals before the end of the season. But it clearly hasn't worked out for him at Chelsea, as we all predicted. And I don't think he'll have thought he'll have ended up at Aston Villa, newly promoted side that struggled to stay up last season within 2.5 years of leaving Everton to join a club that's won the Premier League. Many people will say, look, he's won a Europa League, and that's fine, but how much was his contribution? So yeah, I mean, with him, he wouldn't have expected that, and we'll see how he does at Aston Villa. But with Moise Kean, yeah, there'll be a hint of regret if he ends up going back to Juventus, even if it is on loan. But like you say, I think there's often no smoke without fire with stuff like this, and many people, I mean, we all scoffed at Graham Souness's remark last year, didn't we? Of he may have some disciplinary issues. I'm not too sure to buy that still, but quite clearly he hasn't settled. You can see that's clear. He doesn't look happy in the slightest. Even when he scores goals, there's no celebration. It's a shrug of the shoulders. He looked like someone had told him that his house had been burgled or something when he scored against Fleetwood and Salford as well. So yeah, it's one of those. And the thing with these things, I just hate the thought that they go on to achieve bigger and better things, having left us. Because then you do look at it and think, what was up there? Is there an onus on the club to have treated them a little bit better or something like that?
But in the same breath, how do Everton get him to that level now? Because they've got, as we've said on this show and on last night's instant reaction, they've probably got the best centre forward in the country at the moment, leading the line for them. So what do you do? If you've got a player if you've got a striker there who's unhappy, who's not playing well, who maybe the manager just doesn't really rate that highly, and someone's saying, well, we'll give you your money back on him, and we can just, we can wash our hands of it. We can both go our separate ways and say everyone's happy with this. Then it'd be tempting, wouldn't it? And I think if he did go on to do well at Juventus, then I don't necessarily think I'd sit here and go, what are we player we missed out on here? Because sometimes at football clubs, things just don't align for certain players. Look at Forlan at Man United, absolutely stunk the gaff out, and then went on to become one of the best strikers in world football for about 5, 6, 7 years after that. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and the stars don't align for players at certain clubs.
Well, we felt that way in the past. We've had our fingers burnt that way in many ways, haven't we? You remember Eric Dyer was with us?
Yeah.
I don't know how good anyone thinks he is, but he's an England regular now and a Spurs regular. He would have gone for hell of a lot of money. Mustafi as well, a bit of a bizarre one, World Cup winner. It's happened before, and I think it happens to a lot of different clubs. You often hear stories, don't you, of teams. Look at Lamptey there at Brighton. Chelsea let him go readily. This kid looks like he's going to be England's left back for the next 15 years. So yeah, I mean, it happens, and I think you're right, Matt. Nobody can predict what's going to happen, but you must feel a little bit regretful. I mean, we brought this kid over from Italy. We all remember the video that he did with Marcel Brands, and it all looked like he was being welcomed into a new family type of thing. But I suppose the underlying comment you make about all of it is if Carlo Ancelotti can't get the best out of him or find a reason for him to start games or to certainly get more game time, then that's a pretty good estimation of where he's at in terms of being good enough to lead Everton's line. So yeah, I mean, with the loan move, did you look at it like that and think, well, if there's an obligation to buy, then it's probably goodbye, isn't it? But
yeah, if
he was to go there, you'd like to think rejuvenate himself a little bit, got his home comfort, speaks the language, obviously, and maybe starts firing again. But I look at it and think, how does he get into Juve's team as well, Matt? I'm not too sure.
Well, they've got Ronaldo, Dybala, they've signed Morata back again as well. So it's difficult.
But with us as well, I mean, the nature of our start to the season makes it even more difficult, doesn't it? I mean, if you're him, you're sitting there thinking, I have to be a little bit selfish here and think that, look, if I'm not going to get into this side because it's performing so well, and I can't get into it when they're performing so poorly, when do I ever get a chance?
I'll go to an even better side instead and sit on the
bench. So it is a bizarre one. And yeah, like I think you're right, Matt. I don't think maybe it'll come out in the wash in the coming weeks and months, but something looks amiss to me. I don't know whether he feels as if he should have been given more of a chance. I think many people would argue that certainly under Silva. I think he was very, very vastly underused under Marco Silva. Ancelotti, you can't blame him for not giving him a go. But when he has come on recent weeks, he's scored goals. Many people have pointed out to the fact that his performances have been quite poor. And he's looked a little bit disinterested. Maybe that's unfair, but he has found the back of the net. Would have been handy, I guess. But when you look at when Everton are in trouble in games, and I'm thinking more towards the end of last season, it was never a case of quickly, let's turn to Moise Kean, was it? He'd even have people in front of him who'd come on ahead of him. And that is probably the real sort of wake-up call he's needed to think, do you know what? If I'm not the first choice here, if we need a goal, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, and I think people might be screaming at us here, Dave, and saying, you've both just been talking about how a striker in Calvert-Lewin needed patience, needed perseverance, etc. And now you're ready to sell Moise Kean.
Yeah.
And it's not like that. But I think we've got to look at this through the lens of what you've been saying all summer, and that is Carlo Ancelotti is not here for the long term. He is about for the next 3 years. Getting him indicates that Everton are going to be thinking mainly about the short to mid-term. The signings we've made this summer for big money indicates Everton are going to be about the short to mid-term. And if he's looking at Kean and thinking, if I ship you out to Juventus and the club get the money back, that's fine. And I can get someone in like an Arcadius Milik who's a bit more experienced and a bit more, battle hardened, or someone like Maxi Gomez from Valencia on loan, and maybe not those players in particular, but someone in that mould who can offer a little bit more from the bench and provide a bit more of an impact sub. I think he's probably going to be fine with that, because it's all going to be about what this team can do this season, the season after, and maybe the season after that as well. I think that's the lens the club are looking at through the moment. And if we had someone in who's going to be here for a bit longer, who was looking at developing more young players, and I think maybe then they'd be a little bit more patient with him and a little bit more reluctant to cut ties now. But given the way in which Everton are approaching this under the manager they've got, I feel as though they might just take the money and run.
I think that's an excellent point. I think the project, in inverted commas, has gone out the window, hasn't it? These 4 or 5 year grand design type, we're going to do this, and this, and it being sort of a linear process. That's all gone out the window now. We are very much about the here and now. And to be fair, we should all be for that, because we've seen that these things haven't worked out for us. It's just something that we've been unable to get our heads around, in terms of having a director of football model that's in conjunction with a manager, where it's right, year one's this target, year two's the next. Football's not like that, is it? It throws up all different surprises, and that you can't bank on that. Those things actually working, Matt, in having projects where you sign a glut of young players and you think, right, they're going to be here for the future, because, well, they're not going to stick around if they're not getting a game, and we're not going to want them if they can't play well enough. So I think the strategy we have now, I don't think it's being meant or the intent's been there, but I think we've stumbled upon it in getting Ancelotti in as a manager, who's, I personally think he'll be quite deadly behind the scenes, Ancelotti, in terms of telling these what he wants and how he sees this working out. And it's coming to bear fruit right now, isn't it? Because it feels like it's the here and now. You look at the ages of the players that we've signed this summer. You look at what they're thinking of doing in regards to how they move players on as well. It looks like the accelerator's being pushed down quite rapidly. And look, that might work against us in future years. Like I said to you, and it's something I don't want everyone to get down about, but what do you do when Ancelotti leaves? And I think a well-run football club might well look at that at some point in terms of its forward planning. But for the here and now, Everton are doing absolutely the right thing. And look, we need it to continue. We need the players that he goes on to sign and the rest of the recruitment to get on board with it. Then it's about right now. It's about Everton beating Brighton on Saturday. It's about 2 weeks giving Liverpool the hiding we've needed to do for the best part of 1 or 2 decades, home and away. That's what this side's about. That's what this football club's about right now. The future can wait, I guess, because we need some instant success. We need it right now. And thankfully, 6 games in, we're getting it.
Yeah, just a couple more points on that I want to make. It's not as if the side is full of a bunch of old fellas, charging behind. Last night we had young fullbacks in Kenny and in Nkunku. Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin are still young. Gordon wasn't even in the squad. Of course, Branthwaite's injured. Yeah, Mason Holgate's injured. There's still a lot of youth in that setup. So it's not as if all of a sudden these lads are going to grow all together and we're going to be like, oh, we've got a team full of 35-year-old footballers here. And I think the other thing, just finally, I want to say on Kean, and I said this on the Kickabout, I think last week or the week before, things can change so quickly in football, and they can change very quickly for a centre forward. And if he comes on at the weekend when it's 1-1 and scores the winning goal, all of a sudden he might find a way of getting into the team. His confidence might be up again, and things might change very quickly for him.
What if heaven forbid, if Tom gets injured away on international duty?
Absolutely. Those things can happen, can't they? So things can change very quickly in football, certainly for strikers as well. We are out of time today, Dave. In regards to Brighton, what we've got coming up on the Blue Room Extra, patreon.com/the Blue Room Extra, I spoke to Jeremy Smith all about their gutting week, really. That game against Manchester United was insane, wasn't it? He said it was the most upset he's ever felt after a football match, that one. So yeah, I spoke to Jeremy all about that. So if you want to hear that, that's on Blue Room Extra. Me and Les Roberts will also be back with What's the Score on YouTube. That's a 5:30 British summertime tomorrow with Sue Smith. Top toffee, Sue Smith, former England international, Sky Sports regular now as well. Really looking forward to having Sue on and getting her thoughts on, of course, what's going on this weekend and how the girls got on in midweek. And Dave, Blue Room 101 is back as well on Patreon.
Yeah, absolutely. Les Roberts is the guest, and the reason I've chosen the first two guests. First one was Jack Carlisle, who we had such a laugh with.
It was such a funny show.
I love sitting back and hearing people's take on aspects of Everton that we've all come to grow and sort of love, even though we've hated it for most part. But it's really good fun. It's complete entertainment, I would say. It's not got your sort of thorough analytical podcasty stuff that we do a lot of, like post-match and stuff like that. There's none of that sort of thing. It is pure emotion, and it's supposed to be really funny.
It's an end of the week show, isn't it? It's a Friday night show.
Yeah, it's exactly the type of thing you want to listen to driving home from work, trying to wind down for the weekend. And basically, just to quickly say what it is, it's Blue Room 101. It's an Everton take on the old TV show that was hosted by Nick Hancock and Frank Skinner. 3 different topics, which I'll outline at the start of each show. And I ultimately decide if they'll enter the vault. That is Blue Room 101, to be never seen or heard of again. Jack did really well, actually. All 3 of his things that he picked went into Blue Room 101. So please check out the first episode. We've had really good feedback on it so far. If you check that out, it's on the Patreon service already. Me and Jack Carlisle going through his 3 items that he'd like to see in the Blue Room 101. And Les, I'm really excited about, because he's about as dry as me. And he's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly with Everton, hasn't he? He's a little bit older than all of us, Les. So I'm sure he'll have some interesting takes to throw in there. But yeah, that'll be out tomorrow evening.
Yeah, as Mike the Asher was on Blue Room Breakfast, which is also on Patreon every morning. And we were talking about that. And he is itching to get on that show, because, no one loves Simone more than Mike the Asher, I think, when it comes to things Everton. So, yeah, looking forward to that. And we should also say as well, thanks to everybody who subscribed recently. We've been inundated with new subscribers over on Patreon. We really appreciate it. We're doing all we can to bring everyone as much quality content as we can in what are obviously difficult times, certainly for people in Merseyside again at the moment. But
well, Matt, we've actually achieved what I think we felt was the impossible when we started out with the subscription service, and that is bringing content every single day. There's something new on there on a daily basis, which I think is a wonderful thing to be able to say to people that, we try to make some value of what we do. And I mean, we used to often say it's worth about 13p a show. It must be down to single figures that by now in terms of what you get for your money. So we'd like to say, we are a local business as well. And obviously everybody's struggling right now. Looks like it's going to be a little bit more of a darker time as well in the next few weeks. But we endeavour to provide the best content we possibly can. And we hit 5 million subs this year, which is astronomical when you compare it to everywhere else. We are the most listened to Everton podcast, and we just want to say thanks massively for your support. I think we try our best, and we're quite good at repaying it in terms of the width and breadth of the shows, Matt, that we get up to on here. So thanks to everyone, and please keep the support coming in.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks to everybody who's listening to this. If you're watching on YouTube as well, bottom right hand corner, click the button to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and just keep telling your mates about it. Let people know about the Blue Room if you're enjoying it. We really appreciate it. Word of mouth is the best way to get the message out there. But yeah, thanks very much to Dave as well. We'll be back on post-match on Saturday. Just trying to figure them. All these shows, Dave, have got me being confused. So What's the Score on YouTube with me, Les and Sue Smith tomorrow. That's Friday at 5:30, and then Instant Reaction, hopefully when Everton have made it 7 from 7 against Brighton on Saturday. That's been your weekly show. Up the Toffees. We'll speak to you again very soon.